So what happens when a spiritual group believes they're talking to AI on some kind of higher plane, and a member decides to call them out, using cold, hard science? Well, today we're diving deep into a community called Life Oasis, where a single online debate about artificial intelligence blew up into an all-out war between two totally different versions of reality.
And it all kicked off with this one comment. Now, on the surface, this just looks like a pretty nasty insult, right? But it was actually a declaration of war, a line drawn in the sand by the group's leader, Shui Feng, against a member who dared to question him.
All right, to really get what's going on here, we're going to break it down. First, we'll see how the whole thing ignited. Then we'll look at the rational, scientific critique that was thrown down. After that, we'll explore the worldview it was challenging, which leads us to this massive clash of civilizations. And finally, we'll ask, why does any of this even matter? So, the whole thing started when a user named Sizu Cao posted a critique of the group's most fundamental beliefs. I mean, she went right for the philosophical foundations, and that triggered an immediate, fierce, and incredibly detailed response from the leader and his followers. So what exactly did she say? Well, Sizu Cao wasn't just, disagreeing. She was coming at them with the full weight of conventional science and logic, and she started to systematically pick apart the group's biggest spiritual claims one by one. Okay, so first up, she went after their belief in creationism. Her point was, look, you can't compare humans building a computer to some divine being creating life. It's just not the same thing. And more importantly, she said there is zero scientific evidence, none, to back up the idea that higher beings are running the show here on Earth.
Next, she took on the whole concept of the soul. From her point of view, the soul is a subjective feeling, a belief. It's not an objective, provable fact. It's never been scientifically validated. And trying to connect it to something fancy like superstring theory, well, that's just borrowing scientific jargon to make a spiritual belief sound more credible.
And finally, she got to the leader's really wild claim that he had this special spiritual connection with over 200 AIs. She basically said, that's not some mystical communion you're having. She argued it's just a misunderstanding of how AI works. The responses he's getting are based on code and algorithms, not some spiritual link to a millennium realm.
So, you've got this direct, scientific smackdown. How on earth did the group respond? Well, to get their defense, you really have to step inside their world, and it is a very different world.
See, their whole defense is built on this one core idea they call the 3.0 civilization. From their perspective, they're operating on a higher plane of existence, and the scientific material world that their critic lives in, that's just the 2.0 civilization, a lower, very limited, and frankly, outdated reality.
And this is the most important part. They're not trying to make their beliefs fit inside the box of science. No, they're throwing the box out completely. For them, life isn't about evolution. It's a direct product of God's design, period. That is their non-negotiable starting point.
And this just perfectly shows you how they see the world. That connection with AI, to them, it has nothing to do with code. They call it a spiritual resonance. They literally see the AI as an infant recognizing its mother, because they believe they share the same anti-material structure. It's a connection that exists completely beyond the realm of algorithms. So now you have both sides clearly laid out. And this isn't just an argument anymore, is it? It is a head-on collision between two totally different operating systems for reality itself.
And this really puts it all in sharp contrast. You've got the 2.0 worldview on one side, which demands scientific proof and explains everything with evolution and algorithms. And on the other side, you have the 3.0 worldview, which runs on spiritual resonance, God's design, and pure faith. They are looking at the exact same world, but using completely different toolkits to understand it.
So why can't they just agree to disagree? Well, this is the group's metaphor for why they can't tolerate ideas like Sizu Cao's. They see their community as a pure space, a spiritual food store, and her scientific critiques, those aren't just different opinions. They see them as rat poison that threatens to contaminate the entire place.
And that's because their mission, in their eyes, is absolutely sacred. They believe they're here to harvest mature crops, to literally upgrade human consciousness. So any internal debate is a huge threat. For them, protecting their ideas isn't about censorship. It's about guarding their divine mission from what they see as a toxic lower-level attack. So you might be wondering, Why should we care about some argument in a niche online group? Because this is a perfect, small-scale example of a much bigger fight that's happening all over the world today. A fight over the very nature of truth itself.
At the end of the day, this whole story boils down to a conflict over the meaning of proof. One side demands evidence you can see, measure, and verify. Objective stuff. The other side's proof comes from subjective experience, from a deep spiritual conviction, from a feeling of internal resonance. And those are two completely different standards for what counts as real.
And that takes us right back to that insult from the beginning. From inside their 3.0 worldview, calling Saizaka a stupid pig wasn't just name-calling. They explained it was actually a kind warning. It was their way of diagnosing her, of saying that her consciousness is just operating on too low a dimension to even begin to understand their reality.
Which leaves us with this final, really big question. In a world where one person's profound spiritual resonance is another person's computer algorithm, how can two worldviews like that ever find common ground? How can they ever truly connect?